Hello and welcome to the favourite Football Extra Time podcast. I'm James Killick and with me today is Benjamin Howard.
Hello.
How are you doing?
2021, come at me. New year, new me, new football. Bullshit. Same shit still, but let's go.
Yeah, we're back in the full swing now, aren't we? It's good to be back, guys. It's good to be back. So just before we begin, as usual, we are going to read a review. This one was a 5-star from Test Champ. The title was Best Football Podcast, and the description was very interesting and very funny. Loved the quiz. Now, I really appreciate that, but I listened to that quiz back, and that was shit. So, I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Did you enjoy the quiz, Ben?
Well, I thought my answer was good. I thought my questions were good anyway, but...
Mine is confusing the format and everything else that happened on that day. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for taking the time to leave a review. As always, please leave your review to get your chance to be read out on the show. Right, Ben, we've had a couple of games this week. The first one we're going to start with is obviously in the Premier League, which was the Monday night game, which was Southampton 1, Liverpool 0. What do you think of this?
You would say, based on the balance of play, Southampton deserved to win, because if I'm being honest, Liverpool didn't really show anything, and I think that's been an Achilles heel with Liverpool this year. Their away record seems to be letting them down, and players not really performing to the best of their ability as well. Like you see Trent Alexander-Arnold at fault for the goal, and then you see Mane, Salah and Firmino not producing up front as well, and it's a bit like, where is that burning desire to win and get through these games? And Liverpool aren't really playing like champions at the moment.
Do you think, though, it's difficult, isn't it, because of the injuries they've got or whatever else is going on at the moment? If you look at their first team, it wasn't their first choice team, was it? I mean, look at their centre backs, for example. They've already had to drop in a centre midfielder, haven't they? And Fabinho has obviously looked very good in that position, but let's not forget, that isn't really his position. And then, of course, they had to drop Henderson in. It's not ideal, is it?
I mean, you've got a massive injury crisis when you've got Jordan Henderson and Fabinho playing their centre-back to you, because both their best positions are in the middle of midfield. And although Fabinho's done a really good job at the back, his best position is still in the middle of midfield. And I guess for a centre-back, you can't really have any makeshifts, like have a makeshift left-back going there or a makeshift centre defensive midfielder going in there. You need a centre-back who's near enough been playing at their whole career at a high level to be commanding and know where the danger is. And if you haven't got that, I feel like you're always going to struggle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they started a slightly different midfield, of course, with Thiago in the middle. Obviously, it's good to see him start to come back, isn't it? Wijnaldum and Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's obviously had several injuries since he's been there, but it just wasn't enough, was it, on the night? It wasn't enough at all, but saying that, looking at the stats, I mean, Liverpool did dominate possession, didn't they? They had way more shots than Southampton, but only one on target, which is surprising. And of course, going down that early in the game, it's always going to be an issue, isn't it? And that finish from Danny Ings, his 50th goal, obviously against his former club. What a finish. That is one of the best finishes I think we've seen, isn't it, this season so far?
Was it a cross or was it a shot?
No, it was a shot.
Was it a cross or was it a shot? That's the thing. Was it a cross?
I definitely think it was a shot. I don't think that was a cross at all, because he's only got one potential thing to do there. But if you look where he contacts the ball, he's almost at full strength, isn't he? Full length. His leg is out pretty much as far as it can go, and the way it just dips over Alisson. It's a world-class finish, and it's a shame, Danny Ings, really. If you look at Liverpool now, you think they could use a Danny Ings off the bench, couldn't they?
Well, yeah, you'd think they could use a Danny Ings as you see his goal scoring record for Southampton. He scores near enough 4 every 2 games, isn't it? And then you look at Firmino's record, he's scoring like every 4 or 5 games. And I guess that's the difference between a top quality striker and someone who isn't. And maybe obviously the reason they sold Danny Ings is because see that obviously injuries and wanting to play game time and him not getting the Liverpool side. But you'd think with the form he's in and has been in Southampton, he would easily get in that Liverpool side. And I think Diego Jota, before he was injured, he was on fire with getting in on the goals as well.
Yeah, it was definitely right for Ings to move at the time, though. I don't think it was a mistake when he went. I think everyone thought, okay, that's probably the best thing for everyone, isn't it? They can obviously, get a bit of money and he can move on, hopefully play more. But he scored 36 now with Southampton. It's 36 out of his 50 with Southampton already. So it shows, doesn't it? If he could have kept fit, all of that time, He's a fantastic finisher. He's one of the best finishers, actually. In fact, in front of goal, isn't he? He's clinical.
Yeah, you would say he's probably up there with Jamie Vardy and Kane in terms of his finishing ability. Like, how often do you see Vardy and Kane missing opportunities? Very, very unlikely. And you would say he could be obviously one of our main threats for the England team.
Yeah, he certainly deserves a look in, doesn't he? Obviously, we've got so many good options up there at the moment. Obviously, with Kane and, say, Vardy, if they can convince him to come back, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But he does add something, for sure. I'd like to see him there, and he seems a really likeable guy as well. So let's obviously concentrate a bit more on Southampton. They're doing well this season, aren't they? Sitting in 6th place at the moment. They played one more game than a couple of the teams around them, but they really look like a together team. Good unit. I think Walcott's actually been a very good signing for them, hasn't he? I think he really deserves some credit. He just adds a little something, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think obviously going back to the club where it all started, I think if you grow up at a club where you've mostly played all your life and started with, you seem to get that a bit more. Like Zaha, I remember when he was at Palace, he done well, then obviously he went to United, then Cardiff, and didn't really perform well. And ever since then, he's performed well at Palace. And I feel like if you associate a club with your home, then you tend to give a bit more.
Yeah, going back to your club certainly can give you that, especially one that gave you really the chance, obviously, to move to Arsenal, where he spent it was around 10 years, wasn't it? Walcott at Arsenal it was very long for him. But okay, looking at Liverpool, then obviously they're joint, or they're still top at the moment. But Manchester United have that game in hand. Do you worry with City coming up with 2 games in hand and Manchester United pushing, even Leicester pushing? Do you think for Liverpool they need to do something in January, maybe get a defender in, or do you think they've got so many? You know, they have got Matip, Gomez, obviously Van Dijk, injuries, etc. They got the youngsters as well. Do you think they need to get someone else, or do you think just hold strong and it will all come together?
I think it doesn't help if you've got your 2 centre-backs out for the season and you see Matip, he's always injury prone, he's made out of biscuits, he is, and you don't really, if you count out Gomez, Matip and Van Dijk, then you're going to be obviously struggling to do that, like, to even grasp the severity of your defence. Like, we know how good Robertson and Alexander-Arnold have been in the fullbacks. However, if you haven't got that commanding centre-back duo, then you're going to be in trouble. I think he's fielded 10 different centre-back pairings this year already, Klopp.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change. Didn't he play one of the young Williams there earlier in the season?
Yeah, he's played Reece Williams there. He's played Nat Phillips there. He's played everyone there.
But Williams played well though, didn't he? The game a little while ago, I think we spoke on the podcast and we were quite impressed by his performance. Can't remember the game now, but maybe
it's a lot to ask from. He was at Exeter, weren't he? Well, I think he was obviously the lower leagues, like Exeter Academics or something like that, and it's very hard to thrust a 19-year-old who's come from the lower leagues into high caliber games and expect them to perform well all the time.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I just wonder if I just feel a bit uncomfortable, I guess, with Henderson, who's obviously been an incredible player for Liverpool and still is an incredible player. You know, him being pushed back instead, though, I still don't know if that is the right decision. Easier for me to say, obviously, I don't know what's going on at the club with fitness, etc. But you do think you'd rather have maybe a 4th choice centre-back than your maybe 1st choice midfielder, wouldn't you? Especially when you've already got a midfielder in defence. I don't know, is that just me, or do you agree?
For me, I'd rather have a person who knows the role of a centre-back. Like, a midfielder, I don't think they quite grasp the reality of being a centre-back. As a midfielder, yeah, you're expected to defend and pass the ball out, but as a defender, you've got to read the whole pitch and game and look at your strikers and marshal your defence. And I think there's so much more responsibility being a centre-back than what there is being a midfielder.
Yeah, saying that though, I guess if you look at the game and the chances, really, as you said, the trouble or the mistake, actually came from the right-hand side, didn't it? With Alexander-Arnold rather than the centre-back. So I guess maybe that's pressing a bit too much into it. But then, of course, if you've got them players drop back, they're not in midfield, and that will affect the rest of the team, won't it? So we'll have to see what they do going ahead. They've been linked to several defenders. I'm not sure if they will sign anyone, and if they do, obviously they're going to have so many defenders on their books, aren't they? Once they're all back to fitness, they're going to have too many, probably, too many, unless they get a loan in. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what they do, but Obviously,
Yeah, well, they had Lovren there last year, didn't they? But
yeah.
he wasn't the best. He wasn't. Let's be honest, he wasn't the best of defenders, but was he?
No, but I guess for a game like this, he'd have been perfect just to drop in, wouldn't he? Just on an occasion like this. But, you know, things change. It was nice to see Hasenhüttl's reaction at the end, wasn't it? His emotional reaction. He was so happy. He was so proud of his team. It was nice to see that. And I think it really sums up sort of that feel in the Southampton camp, doesn't it? They do give you sort of that Liverpool feel, and I guess you think of it more as Liverpool, obviously, because they're a bigger team, but the togetherness in that Southampton squad, they really seem like a great group of guys, don't they? Really working well together.
I think that he deserves huge credit for that as well, because obviously a lot of people might have wrote him off when he lost the 9-0 game to Leicester, but since that they've been a completely different team. Obviously, I think at the beginning of the season as well, when they lost to Palace and Spurs so heavily, people question him as well, but I think he's quite astute in what he does, and his time at Leipzig was very successful, and his signings as well this summer with Jallo, I thought we played well against Liverpool as well, and I think he believes in his players. He is a bit like Klopp in terms of his man management, and the players seem to want to play for him in that.
Yeah, it seems to get good performances from players that maybe, because if you look at that Southampton squad, it's quite a random mix. If we look at, obviously, I know Forster doesn't usually start, but we saw he was sort of in the team and out the team for a long time, wasn't he? Fraser Forster in goal. He played well. Obviously, Walker Peters was from Spurs, wasn't he? They lost players in the summer, but they got Walcott, as I said earlier, and obviously got Ings, which was very good business. They got Ward-Prowse, obviously you can, probably the best free kick taker in the league. They've just got such a nice balance, and these players, Bertram with their own story, but coming together, they're such a likeable team. I think they're really one to watch. Whether they'll finish as high as this at the end of the season, I don't know, but I think we'll enjoy the ride with them.
No, look, I think obviously the job he's done at Southampton, I think he does deserve, maybe no disrespect to Southampton, but a job at a bigger club. Who's to say he wouldn't do a good job at Man United?
Or even Dortmund, although, it's been sorted. But, you could see him there, couldn't you? That sort of club. But I think Southampton's a good place to be, and we've seen managers go from there on to bigger things, haven't we? So, potentially, we'll have to see what happens.
Well, potentially.
Yeah. Let's not wish that too much for our Southampton fans, but he seems very happy there. So, he's definitely there for the season, guys.
To keep up to date with the show, follow and contact us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Favourite Football Pod. Email us at hello@favouritefootball.com. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/favouritefootball. Also, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review. Name and shame us.
Alright, let's move on then, shall we? To the Carabao Cup semi-finals. So starting off with the first one, which was on Tuesday, which was Tottenham Hotspur versus Brentford. Once again, an early goal helped sort of decide the fate of this game, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
12 minutes. Yeah.
It kind of does all the time. Yeah, I mean, if you score the early goal, then you're kind of in that driving seat, and it all depends how the other team reacts. Because Mourinho, I think we've seen in recent weeks, if they get the early goal, then they kind of sit back, don't they? But with this game, they scored the early goal and they kind of controlled it. I thought Brentford were very positive, but again, it was a Jose Mourinho type performance. They controlled the game, and when they got the second goal, they needed to. They got it. Unfortunately, Brentford had a goal disallowed offside again, which was very, very tight. And maybe if you didn't have VAR, it would have been given. But I wouldn't say there was no shame in Brentford losing, because I feel like they were quite positive in their approach, and they beat 4 Premier League teams along the way. So you would say they kind of deserved it most to be in that semi-final.
Yeah, I think so. It's good to see him now. I think they're a nice team to watch. As you say, positive. It's, I guess, one of the things when you've got the bigger team, and Sissoko, of all people, scores against you, you wouldn't expect that necessarily, would you? And it kind of, as you say, set the scene with the offside goal. That was even Tony, wasn't it? With the offside goal. And obviously, we spoke about him in the last podcast. He's an incredible footballer. It's unlucky for him that didn't count, I guess, but offside's offside. And then after that, obviously, we had the second goal from Son, the sending off, and the writing was on the wall, really, wasn't it? But it was an enjoyable game. And you kind of think the difference now that Mourinho gives Spurs, that when they came to this semi-final, you couldn't see any slip-ups, could you? Well, I couldn't personally. I thought, well, they're definitely going to the final. I mean, he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose to Brentford. It just can't happen.
You didn't think, they're going to do a Tottenham. Like, they've not won a trophy in 13, 14 years now, and Mourinho's won this competition 4 times. So he does have a knack for winning, and I think, like most of us agree, getting that first trophy for your club is so important because that can set you on your way for the future for other trophies.
Yeah, of course it can. You need to win, and this is one that not every team takes as seriously as other competitions. Obviously, Manchester City do, because I think they realise the importance of winning this trophy. You know, because it's a trophy, isn't it? And winning it breeds more winning, doesn't it? Really, you get into that winning habit, and it's sort of a knock-on effect. And yeah, I thought it was a good game. I thought it was
I think once you win one trophy, it sets you up for more. Like I think we saw with Liverpool, where they won the Champions League, and then anything part of the Champions League, they just seemed to win, didn't they? With the UEFA Super Cup, then the Premier League.
Yeah.
So it kind of does set you on your way, and it's typical Mourinho. I think the response after the game, which I did find funny, was Højbjerg after the game was saying, because obviously De Silva got sent off for his tackle on him. He was like, "Of course you didn't mean it, so don't worry. I'm a Viking and I am fine, but you owe me a new shin pad."
I thought it was really nice actually sending that tweet, you know, because we're in a time, aren't we, where people see something like this, and if it would have been, you know, a terrible injury, you could imagine the absolute backlash you would have got, couldn't you, from fans, or I wouldn't say actual fans, but these idiots on Twitter, you know, going at players, you know, extremely hard, being extremely unfair about ridiculous things. And I actually think him doing that was cool because, you know, he's like, I'm fine, and also it sort of diffuses the situation, doesn't it? It's sad to think really that that's the case, and I'm even saying that, but it is, isn't it? That's just where we are now, unfortunately, with football. You can imagine everyone jumping on the back. Well, should we move on to the next game then? And we had the Manchester derby in the other semi-final, of course. Manchester United 0, Manchester City 2. What do you think of this game?
Is it time to now replace Man United's name with Bottle Job FC United?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you are... Yeah, you can look at it, okay, they've lost another semi-final. They haven't been able to progress past that under Solskjaer so far. That seems to be where they're at. But you have to also look, I guess, at Manchester City and go, do you know what, though? They do have an amazing squad. One of the most renowned managers. Is it too harsh to go down sort of the bottle route, do you think?
I'm still going down the bottle route because he has now lost 4 semi-finals. And that's as many as Ferguson lost in 26 years as Man United. And it breeds a winning mentality. You're like, I know people said the same about Klopp, but they called him a bottle job, but he won league titles at Dortmund. He did get to finals and he didn't win it, but he was getting to finals and he's being close. Your bottle job in semi-finals and you can't even get to the final. And that's happened 4 times now in under 2 years for them, and it's a bit like, where is that winning mentality? Like, you can't get Bruno Fernandes to always win those games for you. It's a team effort, and even his in-game decisions as well, like bringing Donny van der Beek with only 4 minutes left, is a bit like, you paid this huge money for him, like, play him sooner as well. And yeah, it's a bit like, I know United fans are pretty positive going into this because obviously they're top of the league and they had a chance. However, if you look at it, they've been dumped out of the Champions League this year, now been dumped out of another competition, and it's a bit like they're kind of topped by some luck as well. And I don't think it's all roses still for Man United because there are still better teams than them in the league.
No, I think whether United have a good a squad as City, I'm not sure, but they do have a good squad, and I guess this is what people say. It's not hate for Solskjaer, but when it comes to these sort of crunch times, your players are one thing, but also your manager is the extra, isn't he? That manager who has experience, who's won it before, who's done it before, can get you that little bit further by doing something. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, obviously, when we saw them go out the Europa League and the way they went out the Champions League and stuff, I'm not saying that's his fault. Obviously, it's the whole squad and he's not on the pitch, but you do feel that lack of experience, it does show with the new managers. And it's not just him. We've also seen it, of course, with Arteta, who, you know, look how Arsenal fell apart, and Lampard and the run that's on. The experience does pay off, doesn't it?
It does. It's like do you either stick with your manager who hasn't got any experience, and for them to keep getting experience, or do you jump with the gun and get someone more experienced? But then it's a bit like, oh, if you fire them, how are they meant to get experience? But then it's a bit like you kind of know who the good managers are straight away. You saw with Klopp when he was at Dortmund, like even though he got Mainz relegated, he brought him back up, and then he went to Dortmund and won lots of stuff. So although people do have their setbacks in management, say he had a setback with Cardiff. However, what did he ever do to deserve the United job anyway?
I don't know. You do think that the way these managers become good managers is by taking a team who maybe shouldn't win something and do win something, you know? That's how you get the reputation. Obviously, if you look at, we'll mention Mourinho because he just did that. Clearly, you could look at the Porto thing and go, do you know what I mean? That was impossible. But then also, if you look at Mourinho at Manchester United, he did win trophies there, didn't he? And that was a team that was not as strong as the one now. And he's not loved. He certainly wasn't loved at Manchester United. I think maybe that was a bit both ways. It didn't work out, but I mean, he walked away from there with a couple of trophies, didn't he? And an FA Cup final. And I think maybe that's the difference, and that's also the difference for many other clubs. You know, you can even say Arsenal.
It does make me laugh though, because United fans weren't happy with winning all that, but some seem to be happy doing this.
Yeah, well, it's cross, isn't it? Because some people look at it very black and white. The trophy cabinet, what's there? Other players will look more, or other fans, will look more at the team and go, oh, do we prefer how the team's playing? Do we, prefer the style or the players that they're bringing in, or the manager's, relationship with the fans? It's a bigger thing when you're an actual fan of the club, isn't it? I guess, than us looking from the outside and saying, well, he doesn't win. Why do you like him? But as you mentioned before in previous podcasts, we sometimes, if you look at the Chris Hughton thing or the Tony Pulis thing at their clubs, fans sometimes just think, do you know what? We just hate this. We're just not enjoying it for whatever reason. And I guess that's just, part of being a fan. But if you look at Manchester City's performance, it was good, wasn't it? It was very good, as you'd expect.
Well, yeah, we don't know what we've kind of seen with each City side this season. Like, they kind of have been a bit up and down. We don't know what we're going to get with them. And I don't know if that's because of the motivation of players. Like, when you've won everything you could possibly get, sometimes you lose that motivation, or Pep does. But it seems like in recent weeks, Pep kind of got his flow back. It doesn't seem as visible, and everything kind of seems to go be played like we saw at Chelsea with superb. And again, I thought they did a very good job over Man United, and it was obviously a game based on set pieces. But even on that, they didn't start with Aguero or Jesus, and they're obviously doing a false nine with De Bruyne and Mahrez. That probably confused Man United as well. Stones looks a different player who's not short of confidence anymore. And Diaz, I mean, when I was interviewing Hugo a while ago, he wasn't the biggest fan of Diaz, saying he would struggle, but he seems to be performing well as well. And it's a bit like everything seems to be going well for City. And even the backup goalie, Stefan, who's performed quite well in place of Ederson as well.
Yeah, had a little shaky moment, didn't he, in the last game where he picked up when he picked up a back pass?
Yeah.
And a little bit of shakiness at the beginning, but he did make a very good save, didn't he, throughout the game? Yeah, a really good save, in fact, and he did get comfortable. But as you say, with that centre-back pairing looking stronger now, isn't it, with Diaz, who has fit in and is a more of an old school defender, isn't he, Diaz? He can do the other stuff as well, but he's got that edge about him. And obviously Stones as well, who's come back to form, thankfully, because worried he might have to move on or whatever, but we're seeing the best of him. So I think for them it's good. And if you look at the table at the moment, obviously, of Manchester City, they do have 2 games in hand over Liverpool, top of the table at the moment. And if they win them games, they'll be top of the league. So when you look at it like that, on a 5-game sort of Premier League run where they haven't lost, and a Carabao Cup final, it like Ellis was mentioning in the last podcast, there's a long way to go. They could still win this league, couldn't they? The only thing probably they have to address, as you mentioned, is the striker situation, because if Jesus isn't getting the goals and Aguero isn't your man now for whatever reason, do you bring someone in January?
I can't see them getting someone in January, because I don't think he really does that in January, does he, Pep Guardiola? I think the only time he's really bought big in January was for Laporte, but I can probably see him waiting till summer to get a striker in. Who knows who that be? Because obviously, if you want a good striker, you're going to have to pay a massive premium for that.
Especially when you're Man City, and especially if you attempt it in January. I mean,
and especially if you want Messi as well in the summer, supposedly.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, we should mention as well that the teams both pay tribute to Colin Bell, who's a Manchester City legend. He won the League Cup in 1970. He actually scored in a semi-final win against United. So our thoughts, as our Instagram post said, our thoughts with obviously the fans and his family and friends, and yeah, it was nice to see respects paid for him, because he's always one of them names that's around, isn't he? He's always been sort of linked with Manchester City and their past, so obviously extremely sad to hear that. Moving on, Ben, to the final of the Carabao Cup. What do you think is going to happen?
Based on history, you would say it's pretty even. Like, Mourinho's won it 4 times, and now Man City are on it to win it for 4 times in a row, so the stars have kind of aligned.
City have won, is it 5 out of the last 6? Is that correct?
Yeah,
5 out of the last 6, yeah.
Like, and it shows how important it is to Guardiola. Like, even though not many people rate this competition, he wants to win it all.
Oh, it's a trophy, isn't it? It's something that becomes part of your history. Whether, how much you want to rate it or not, is it not better to look at the cabinet and see another trophy than, not? It's something, isn't it? It's a competition that people could take seriously if they wanted to, maybe don't always, but so, you think it's going to be close? I personally think that Tottenham will win. And I think that because I said, didn't he, when they brought Mourinho in, I'm not the only one who said it, I'm not some sort of genius, but he will win something, it's just what he does. And this competition is something where he could win. I mean, he's in the final now. They could do it, for sure. I mean, one good game, I think they could maybe frustrate City, cancel them out, and if City aren't scoring the goals, which they're not seeming to do sort of as free-flowing as they did before, I think it could be one of them days where Kane or Son gets a chance and that's game done. But I'm happy for you to argue my point.
I mean, obviously it will be close, because you ain't going to see Mourinho going to attack City. That's not his style, Mourinho's. Obviously, what we're going to see is them hold back, try and get an early goal, defend for that lead, and be difficult to break down. And with City, we know that what we're going to get with the passing, fluidity, and if they are going to play a striker, if they are going to play with Aguero or Jesus, or if they're going to do that false 9. And personally, I can see it going to extra time, but I can't see it being like a 5-4 or anything. I can maybe see it being like a 1-0 game where it's going to be so tight.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough. I mean, as much as I'm saying I think Tottenham will win it, I can also play the game in my head and see City winning 3-0. Do you know what I mean? It's gonna be a great game, but of course it's that rivalry, isn't it, between Jose Mourinho and Pep Guardiola, which is something I don't think really is as prevalent as people make out. But it's just another nice story, isn't it? It gives that final an edge that maybe it wouldn't always have if it was just 2 other teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's what sells, doesn't it? Like, the manager name sells. No one's gonna watch if it's gonna be, no offence to them, like Dyche versus Hodgson, are they? Well, the battle of the oldies.
I'd watch it. No, it certainly adds something to it. So that game is the 25th of April. So we've got a little while, haven't we? We might see changes in the team. We might see players come back from fitness, etc. So I'm looking forward to it.
Might even see fans.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's why. I think that's the plan, to get fans in. But I mean, didn't we have fans back for sort of 2 weeks recently? And yeah, I mean.
Yeah, not even for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, I guess to finish up the podcast, Ben, is there any transfer news? I mean, it may be old news by the time people hear this, but anything that's surprised you or anything you like the look of so far?
Well, I do have 2 things quickly. One isn't transfer news, and that's AC Milan losing for the first time in 10 months in the league to Juventus.
No, it's important, isn't it? It's an important result.
They've been on a mad run of form as well, AC Milan. So them losing for the first time in 2 months is no disgrace to them, considering where they have been the last few years. So still top of the league, but yeah, that was a huge win for Juventus. And then also Haller seems to be going off to to Ajax. So I'm sure Dan will be quite happy that himself. I've heard he's driving him to the airport right now.
It's tough with him, isn't it? Because I have to say, recently though, he has looked better. Still, probably not good enough, and I guess maybe it is the right time, but I am surprised actually that Now they're letting him go. I thought maybe it will be an end of a season thing, and unless they're thinking, look, while the money's there, take it. But obviously, they've had issues, haven't they, West Ham, with injuries of Antonio, etc. And he has dropped in, and at times he's been okay. And so him going, I wonder if they've got someone else in mind to bring in potentially.
Well, he wasn't cheap either. He cost like 40 odd million, didn't he, to join?
Yeah.
So he wasn't cheap, and they're selling him for 20 million less. So obviously they were ready to buy Ajax's hand off because obviously they didn't value him that much. And I guess it's maybe down to his playing style, because obviously he did have a good couple of seasons at Frankfurt, and it just never seemed to fit in with the way West Ham wanted or played.
Yeah, for sure. Other things, obviously, Wolves maybe won't get Diogo Costa now, Ben, do you think? Because they're bringing back Catroni, aren't they? From loan.
Yeah. Well, Fiorentina didn't want him, though, that's the thing. So if Fiorentina don't want him, and they're not the best of teams now, Fiorentina, you imagine that he's not going to be high up on Wolves' list to be a leading striker for them in the league or cup games. But I've heard, I think it's Sky Sports News, that Jimenez is in early return to fitness.
Well, that's good, isn't it? It's good for the club. Certainly give a big boost. And I guess having numbers there is not going to hurt, is it? If he does come back, even if he can just play, even just coming on as a sub or something. He is a striker, isn't he? Even if he hasn't set the world alight, I guess having an extra number, especially in Wolves' squad, which doesn't seem to be the biggest squad, it's not going to hurt, is it? Also, we've heard that apparently Ozil could be leaving in this window. Arteta's obviously backed that up with comments as well. So it does seem to have more traction than usual, but of course these things can come and die within a few days. So we'll have to see how that pans out. So we'll see. That would be big, wouldn't it, getting his wages off the books? And really it's become very stale, isn't it? And I hope he just continues to play Gunnosaurus, because I bet he's shaking in his dino shoes right now. Other news, Balogun, obviously the Arsenal youngster, haven't reached an agreement, so potentially could see him leaving. And Wijnaldum hasn't signed a new contract either, which is probably one of the biggest sort of stories, isn't it? Because he's had a really good time there. He's a very good player, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess maybe with the signing of Thiago and maybe him being a bit more rigid on what he wants, and because of his age as well, maybe Klopp doesn't feel like he's worth that money because of his age, and he's got other options available to him. However, he could end up signing a deal, but you would imagine it'd be a huge loss if he does end up signing a contract elsewhere, especially for free as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, he's 30 now, isn't he, Wijnaldum? That's from the top of my head. I hope that's right. And he's going to want probably his last big payday, isn't he? Yeah, he's 30 years old. He's going to want his last big one, and maybe Liverpool have to try and balance that with everyone else in the squad, etc. So maybe it would be best seeing him go, but it would be a shame. I like him being in the Premier League, and I don't think he would. I don't think he would go to another Premier League club.
No, it'd probably end up going abroad somewhere. That's what they usually tend to do. Because he's won the Premier League, I can't see him going to another Premier League. He has won in practically everything at Liverpool as well, so you'd imagine he would maybe go somewhere abroad.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Ben, to finish on the biggest news of all, Glenn Murray's loan spell with Watford is potentially ending early, as he's been linked with QPR. So that's the one we all need to know about.
For fuck's sake, Murray!
Bring him back, mate. Bring him back. It's time.
Well, I mean, I would have had him back about 4 years ago.
I'm not going to listen to that on this pod. We're not going to have it. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. It's good to be back, actually. It's good to be speaking to you guys again. We're going to be back on the weekend, obviously, for our normal show. So we hope to speak to you then. All the best from me and Ben.
For fuck's sake, Murray.